My name is Jim Carlson. I'm the EVP of Customer Operations with Link3D. I want to welcome you to our panel today. We've got 4 distinguished guests to join us today to talk about digital transformation, to talk about their journey, their decisions, and how they are viewing getting started in their journey, how they view the challenges along the way, and what they're looking forward to as their journey continues. I'm going to ask each of them in turn to introduce themselves. We'll start with Tomas.
Hello, thank you for having me, and it's nice to do something like this. My name is Tomas Lundström. I'm the head of 3D at PostNord. We are a Nordic logistics company, actually the largest in the Nordic region. So we operate in Sweden, Norway, Denmark, and Finland, where we handle everything from packages to mails to third-party logistics to actually printing stuff and manufacturing stuff as well.
Thank you, Thomas. Nick.
Hi, everyone. My name's Nick Weeks. I'm the General Manager of Carpenter Additive in the Liverpool facility. Carpenter Additive is a leader in additive manufacturing, from the production of powder to the production of parts as well. My area of focus is around the powder life suite of products that we've developed that help create a closed loop powder handling system for additive manufacturing.
Great, thank you, Nick. Tarun.
Hi everyone, my name is Tarun. I am the client account manager for 3D Metalforge based in Singapore. We're a additive manufacturing company that leverages AM to solve problems. We have offices over here in Singapore, Houston, and now in Australia, primarily targeting the oil and gas, marine, and defense sectors for solving their unique problems and challenges.
Thank you, Tarun. Jennifer.
Hi, my name is Jennifer Coyne, and I work for Wabtec Corporation. We are a global business, $8.7 billion business in over 50 countries, located in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. And I, for Wabtec, lead the additive manufacturing team there. And mostly we focus on rail equipment services in transit and in freight. And in additive, we're looking for serving our internal businesses and our customers in those spaces.
Great, thank you, Jennifer. So we're going to start with a fairly general question and allow each of our panelists to talk about their own journey. So the question is really, talk to us about your digital transformation experience, your journey, and what really started that journey, what made you start on that road, and what have been some of your success stories to date. So again, we'll go in the same order just to keep things simple. Thomas.
Yeah, so like I said in my presentation, we are a logistics company. So it started out by looking into the disruptive ways of 3D printing within the logistics sector, but also at the same time looking at how we would change the supply chain of tomorrow to become a more digitalized supply chain with less warehousing and less transportation, etc. So we started out that in 2016, approximately, our group executive team decided to appoint a project team to look into 3D printing and how the effects will be. And soon we came to recognize that it's well beneficially for logistics companies to work with 3D printing if you talk out of a distributed manufacturing society, where logistics companies have the actual local presence in most of the countries that we operate in, with a lot of facilities and the network between companies, etc. So we could actually create these hubs of manufacturing in the future. So the key point we were looking at was how to drive the digitalization of the supply chains. We put a lot of efforts into replicating a physical distribution to a digital distribution, and how are we supposed to solve that? And that's what we are working really intensely on to solve. So we started out there 2016, and we're continuously now working to a more digitalized supply chain.
Great, thank you, Thomas. So I heard that your decisions were around how do you get to a digital thread to tie all of this together and replicate the physical thread that you've perfected over time to find that so-called digital twin. And I also heard you mention sort of the distributed manufacturing, right? How do you do this across multiple locations, multiple facilities, multiple work processes and teams? So thank you for that. I appreciate it. Nick, tell us about your journey, how it started, what success have you had?
Yeah, we started out about 8 years ago, both producing and distributing powder for additive manufacturing. When we did that, we saw quite early on that the current software solutions to try and manage that powder once you've procured it and you wanted to use it multiple times were not fit for purpose for additive manufacturing. And that's what set us off on our journey of developing some software to be able to do that, which we could provide to our customers. So we've had an internal software team in the company now for 8 years, which is quite an investment for predominantly a materials-based company, but it allows us to develop a solution that is fit for purpose for use with the mindset of materials development and materials management in mind, which is where our background comes from. We've certainly had a lot of challenges along the way, I think it's fair to say, but in lots of ways, by employing the same thought process internally, it's helped us to solve some challenges that we have around inventory management and around sort of being able to understand what's going on the shop floor on a daily basis, and also around problem solving as well. So there've been some key focus areas where digital has really helped us move forward.
Good, thank you. A key point that I heard early on was your current systems were not adequate for additive, that additive was specialized enough that you needed to have different tools and systems to be able to grow into additive and explore further. Is that about right?
Yeah, no, that's exactly right, and it's very different from the traditional subtractive manufacturing processes with the way the material flows through the sequential operation. So being able to manage that was a key opportunity to develop something different.
Great, thank you, Nick. Tarun, tell us about your journey, please.
Well, for us, I think as most manufacturers would start off, we started using probably like an Excel sheet, Word documents, the usual Microsoft suite of actionable content that was there. But we soon found it quite limiting for us. We did try and move to the cloud, tried using these same solutions over there. It just didn't work. Why? Because there's a lot of data that gets generated in AM, and we need to sort of manually figure out where to store it, and then also preserve that entire chain as you go through the entire manufacturing. So that could be from your design to simulation results, print logs, test data, creating a library of parts to show that part A relates to part B in some way. And that's been a challenge for us. So over the years, we've sort of learned what systems are good, what systems are bad, what systems are flexible enough for us, and maybe certain traditional systems that are there for the subtractive or the casting, forging industries, they are really good for those industries, but not the best for AM. So it's been sort of like a trial and error to get to our stage of really presenting data to customers and saying, hey, this is your digital thread, and this is what it actually looks like. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you, Tarun. Jennifer, tell us about your path.
Yeah, so we got started in additive in very early 2017. And at the time, my business was GE Transportation, so coming out of the GE side, and we were a year later or 2 years later, I guess, merged with Wabtec. But at the time, you know, GE Transportation, we were about half the size of Wabtec, but very strategically located, only a few businesses and business locations where we had manufacturing and where we had engineering. So I would say, like, at first we were okay handling in those, you know, Microsoft Word kind of, or Microsoft Excel and product lines. We were okay managing that. When we merged with Wabtec, we became the center of excellence for additive manufacturing across that business, which is very distributed. Like I said, over 50 countries, engineering in most of those locations, manufacturing in most of those locations. It was just impossible to keep up with integrating all of those sites and being able to serve our internal business across that distributed landscape. So it was pretty obvious right away that we were going to need something that connected us with our internal business around the world. And also, I'd echo a lot of what Tarun said as far as like keeping the digital thread together. So yeah, necessity from like just a landscaping, we were really diverse, that pointed us there. But then when we talk about actually qualifying parts to put on assets, we have pretty robust quality systems that necessitated the thread being connected and the documentation being there. And AM is different than traditional manufacturing in that like the data generated and also just the steps are different, and in being able to collect it and categorize it and keep it together, it didn't fit our traditional system. So that brought us into the world of digital AM, I'll say, and made that necessary. And we're still working on figuring it all out, but we know we need to, so getting there.
Good. Thank you, Jennifer. So a similar theme from Tarun and Jennifer, talking about the natural evolution from trying this with a homegrown suite of systems, usually tools available to most people, trying to, I'll say, cobble together an end-to-end that you can paint a picture from start to finish and create a thread, and the limitations of that as you grow and scale. So similar stories, thank you. Sticking with Jennifer, we're going to talk a little bit more specifically about the next step of scaling. So Jennifer, you've talked about these 25,000 parts to be printed. What are the challenges to get to that next level of scaling and go beyond 25 and just keep this party going?
Yeah, so a lot of that is probably related to digital thread, but it's also, I'd say it starts with the technology and the capability of the technology. If we can't get past there, it doesn't matter if we can record it. So yeah. I'd say number one challenge, having repeatability within our machines and our processes that can produce that number of parts reliably, and then finding, you know, those pieces that make sense to do that financially. And then third, following that up with recording that, making it just a repeatable process, like a real manufacturing production process that you can reach those volumes without the issues that we see on repeatability and or differences amongst builds, etc. So it's a tall order, but you know, I have 5 years to figure it out, and I'm excited for the evolution of the technology to be able to bring us there. I think it can.
Good, great, thank you. Nick, from your lens, talk to us about some of the challenges you see in scaling around materials management.
Yeah, I think, as you've already mentioned, that Tarun and Jennifer have already said the same thing. When people are setting out and they get their first AM machine, use Excel or whatever to help you manage your traceability. And we've come in contact with a number of companies who scale quite quickly. And as a result, they may have had some issues, or they may have not followed the process that they'd created as well as they should. And as a result, they've got a big room full of powder with some things sketched on the side of the bottles, or a couple of Excel spreadsheets that are slightly corrupted, or someone saved over something else, and they're putting their hair up. But the cost of that has been quite significant. There's a lot of people who've had to scrap off large quantities of powder. Worse still, there's other people who, when they're bringing together their certificate of conformity at the end, they can't get that traceability back to the mill cert of the powder that they procured a month or a year or 2 years ago. So every time we see that, it really screams out for having that traceability software there as a way to manage it. What we've been doing what we're just doing at the moment is coming up with a simplified version of our software, which we can use at entry level for that first customer starting out with one machine and buying 50 kilograms of powder. So we've developed an e-com platform where you can go and buy the powder, look at the different options you've got. But once you've bought it, you get a simplified version of our powder traceability module. So that will allow people to not get in that problem and then try and unpick it, but to start from there and build from there in a sustainable way. So that's a big area that we focused on recently, seeing the way the additive manufacturing market is. You've got a lot of small players in the market, and you've got the big players as well, where that's slightly different in the additional manufacturing side of things.
Good. Thank you, Nick. All right. Okay, Tarun and Tomas, I'm going to ask you guys the same question, and we'll start with Tarun and talk through about your thoughts around IP and data security and how you think about that in the context of your AM process, how you think about it in terms of the digital transformation and traceability, et cetera. We'll start with you.
Well, for us, most of the IP agreements that we have are with customers. So we have certain NDA clauses. Now, for us as a company, it's important to ensure that we contractually comply with those NDAs. And currently, we've sort of built up a cloud system that helps us to enforce and classify different files from different customers and say, okay, hey, this customer, only certain people can access it from a certain location, or they can only modify it. Things like data governance, when you want to ensure that your data is being stored in the cloud, it's being stored in certain locations. You're not having people access data from bad countries, if I can say that. And then, of course, like protecting your customer data. So essentially building out a log file or an auditable trail for your customer to look at and say, hey, listen, there was a breach and we had our data shared on the dark web or something like that. How can we ensure that this didn't come from you? So we need to have those sort of digital footprints that comply and then show us that, okay, we're an OEM, we take data security seriously, and then we also ensure that your IP remains in good hands when it's being shared.
Good. Thank you, Tarun. Tomas, your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I agree a lot with what Tarun said, and we are working closely in finding a way to like encrypt the data from an end-to-end system. Today, we're working a lot with the card manufacturing and high security logistics, etc., which is kind of similar to what we're talking about. The only problem I see with AM is the quality management, like quality secure management. How can we secure that if we print it on two different printers, it will be the same quality, and also that we do not replicate it in the way that, you know, if our operators they want to create, let's say, a copy for themselves. Let's say we do car spare parts a lot in our facilities. What stops our employees from creating a car part that our customers send to us? So, like, essentially protecting the order that came from the customer from an end-to-end system. So that's what I said in the beginning, like replicating a physical distribution. So if we have one part, we can only produce one part, and if it's sent to, let's say, Denmark, then our Danish facility will produce it only one part, not be able to produce 100 parts. And that's like protecting the IP is for part of that we cannot reproduce the customer's data without their allowance in any form. Doesn't matter that we have data security, because we have a lot of data security. We have logs to trace data coming in and out from our servers, from our cloud services, etc. But it doesn't stop us from the human being able to replicate the data with simple press of a button in the production facility. And we can talk about, you know, trust your employees, etc. But at the end of the day, if we have an NDA with our customer, we have eligible to protect their data, then we cannot trust 11,000 employees, for example, in one country. It's kind of hard to do that when we have big agreement with the customer. So finding a way to really make sure that it's end-to-end encrypted in all the machines to a physical product. Even with a physical product, we have a hard time, they could steal it, but we have secure facilities that you cannot just withdraw anything from the facility. So it makes it harder to copy the data. And that's what I think, protecting the IP will be about, protecting the duplication of data in a specific way to really enable the digital AM industry. This needs to be a way to find how we can do that.
Great. Thank you, Thomas.
Adding on to that, actually, speaking on I think what Thomas was getting to is the DRM controlling of certain files. And yeah, it is an important part, but from a service bureau standpoint, you sort of need to strike a balance, because you're not always going to be printing out a successful part on your first try. A lot of, for us at least, if we do a lot of R&D work for the company or for an organization, we sometimes need to do multiple prints with different recipes or parameters. So DRM control, I think it works well when you've locked in everything, but from a R&D build-up, proof of concept stage, it doesn't really come in there very, very well.
Yeah, I totally agree. We're talking about a off-the-market supply chain and a pre-market development. So I completely agree in that case. And I mean, if you're using the same system for an R&D and an off-the-market supply chain, then you need to be able to adapt R&D to certain parameters as well. Let's say that you have 10 tries on you to complete this order, for example. I mean, it could be something like that. But anyway, there needs to be a way to, with like an automated tool, be able to protect the customer's data fully end to end.
Yeah, I mean, that sort of comes back into Jennifer's earlier comment on repeatability and how to ensure that we can produce it going forward.
Yeah, and Jennifer, you have a pretty targeted customer base. Any thoughts around IP and data security?
Yeah, so when we were part of Just GE, this was a little easier because we have really robust security measures and less people to integrate into them, less business entities to integrate into them. Now that it's Wabtec, I won't say it's impossible, but we're trying to get on the same platform, and that's just part of a merger that you go through those growing pains. So right now it's a pretty important topic for us because we are not yet aligned and we're working towards that alignment. So right now we're just very careful with the IP, how we share it. But I see in the future a big need to consolidate this and make sure that we are protecting that data within the company, even, not even talking about external customers, but within the company and across borders, that we're very careful with that IP and how it's accessed and where it's stored and how it's transmitted, where it's printed, etc. So yeah, we have that additional challenge of merger, but all within the same company. So I don't know if that makes it a little easier, maybe not.
Good, thank you. You brought up a topic that I'd like to come back to in a moment, which is change management. We're all going through a lot of change in this industry. So I'd like to come back to that. But before we do, Nick, your thoughts around security. You've got a sort of a different platform to keep secure. Materials management, there's a lot of people that have a very special recipe that they want to protect. How does that play into your decision-making process?
Yeah, no, it's a really good point. Some of our customers use a standardized powder product, and some of them have a bespoke product that obviously they don't want people to find out. Either way, the first question people ask about our software solution is it secure? How do I know I'm going to get the right protections? I'm, as you might be able to tell, British, and I'm working in an American company, so we have the added challenge of ITAR that some of you may or may not have come across. I'm sure you probably all have to a certain extent. So there's ongoing sort of challenges around that. So making sure your database architecture is set up in a way that can provide that functionality to control who gets access to data and how that's managed and stored in a secure cloud environment is always a really hot property in terms of question sets and how we manage that. So it's been the top priority for us for a long time, really.
Yeah, good. Thank you. So I'm going to come back to change management now and sort of ask each of you your thoughts around how does that fit into digital transformation? How do you get people to make that switch? They're dealing with new systems, new tools, new processes, new rules. Jennifer, I'll start with you. Do you have any thoughts around how that process is working well, working poorly, how you affect change there?
Yeah, I think you have to make it easy. So that's like bottom line, you have to make it easy for people. So for example, when we implemented our digital strategy for AM, we needed like a clean interface where we were asking people for just what we needed, and we were serving them well throughout the process with communication and responses, quick responses, helping them understand where their part was through the process, and how we were costing it, for example, how we were building it, for example, how we were storing that information, and where it was along the way. But overall, people do what is easy, and if you make it complicated, they'll give up. So user interface matters is my bottom line.
Nice, thank you. Tarun, your thoughts?
I think for me, what I work with, they come from traditional industries. A lot of my elderly colleagues are from there. So for digitalization, it's still of, hey, I'm used to having the work instructions on a piece of paper. Now you want me to move to an app on an iPad. Where do I key in this data? That sort of a thing. But it also needs to be clear cut, as Jennifer mentioned, like really clean. A lot of the jobs that we do are very specialized, very low quantity items for oil and gas, marine, where while the function may be the same, the way it's put together, the way it's manufactured might be unique to that product. And those sort of like clear instructions, getting that standardized and easy to understand and interpret, defined, I think that's the challenge that we are facing, and we're really hacking away at it day and night.
Good, thank you, Tarun. I'm going to jump to Thomas. Same question, change management. How do you affect people's ability to change?
Yeah, well, I'm a little bit on Jennifer's route there to make it simple. Like when we try to do something and it's not simple, then it will be hard for people to adopt to it. But also the fact that if you don't keep it simple for yourself, you're overdoing it, and then it will like stagger the change in a way that you believe you are further ahead than you actually are, because you need to step back once you launch it because people don't understand. So yeah, holding it and making it easy is a key point. Also being an evangelist about your change, like really talking positive about the potentials and the future impact it will have on people's well-being is a part of the change. And I mean, there are parts that can be bad for people when changing, but essentially most of them are good if you plan it correctly and you show them that there are beneficial potentials that will outcome. So that's my key point in making changes, is to keep it simple and being an evangelist.
Good, recurring theme. Nick, any thoughts?
Yeah, I would build on that sort of user interface, and the simplicity is a really key part. The other thing which is also really important is creating that burning platform. What's the reason to do this change management? And Jennifer gave a great example. You're moving up to, what was it, 250,000 parts in by this time period. You need to have
25,000.
Oh, come on, 250.
Yeah, okay, sorry. Yeah, moving up to a large number of parts, a lot more than you're doing today, and you need to have that conversation with people. How can we keep doing what we're doing if we're making how many X times more parts it is than what we're making today? And that helps build that burning platform. But the user interface thing is also super important. I think my software development team has probably spent 3 or 4 times more effort on the user interface and developing that over the last 8 years than any other part of what we do. And you remember 8 years in from a digital point of view is massive. We didn't think that people would be walking around the shop floor with iPhones or tablets 8 years ago. So we built something that works on a laptop, and people were using that, and they go, well, I can't carry my laptop around on the shop floor while I'm trying to work my AM machine. And we're like, oh, right, we need to change everything so it works on a tablet or phone-based system. And then when we were using that, we have QR codes that you scan, and it can be quite hard to scan them if you're holding a tablet with holding the camera in the right place. So we then had to update the user interface to get it so it works quite well with these kind of handheld scanners you get that have a laser line scanner. I think some people have them in like supermarkets for self-checkout, right. And then you can press the buttons on the top. But if you don't get the feedback from the people using it, and because I'm an evangelist about it, I think, well, I really want to do this. I understand the importance of that data. To a lot of people who haven't got the same vision as me, they go, well, why do I need to do this? And trying to make it as easy for them as possible is 100% the most important thing I think we can all do.
Yeah. Great. Nick, how did you deal with the pushback that you received? Because at least for me, there's been a lot of like, hey, why are we moving to this new system? The old system just works fine. I mean, it's broken, but it sort of works for us, you know, that sort of a thing.
Yeah, a lot of people we get different people a different appetite for change, don't you? And a lot of people like the existing system, and we also ask them to work in a fast-paced environment. Additive manufacturing is changing all the time. The machines are changing. The requirements of the parts we're making are changing all the time. So it's a pretty there's a high rate of change in the business we're operating. So people would like something to stay the same. So it's definitely a challenge, but I completely agree. It's keep telling them the vision, like Tomas was saying, and keep trying to make it as easy as possible for them. We have weekly sort of technical communication sessions where there's different people in the technical team talking about what they're working on, and it's sort of sometimes gets pretty deep in the area that they're working on, whether it's developing a new material or doing something clever with data, or it could be hardware development, and it's quite outside of other people's sort of comfort zones, but by listening to that they get an appreciation for the other things that are going on and where we're trying to get to with our technology strategy, and how capturing that data is a really important part of that. So I think sharing that vision is an important part as well.
Great, thank you.
Yes, can I just chime in there? I'm thinking like, it's nice to hear that you put 3 to 4 times more effort into the user interface than the actual functionality, because I have a solid IT background myself, and more too often do I see that companies heavily rely on the actual engineering development and don't understand the fact that the people who are going to use this do not really care so much about the function if they are hard to use. So I really like to hear that because some powder developer is using that into your integration or development, sorry. And yeah, really good to hear.
Yeah, no, it's a realization we had actually just in the last year of how many times we've had to change the way that the user integrates with it, and you realize that's what you're spending most of your time doing, because you want to make it as easy as possible to reduce that barrier to entry when you're talking about a software solution.
Yeah, I just like draw a comparison to nothing AM related but software related. Like we have this track and trace app for logistics, and we actually integrate the user interface where we put in like the height of a person, like a picture of a drawn person in allocation with the package that they're going to receive, which creates you know, the people understand, okay, how big is the package that's coming to me. Just a simple thing like that kind of increase the use of our app really much. So those small things that.
It's also user expectation, isn't it? Think how far the digital technologies come in the last 5-10 years in terms of what people expect from the software that they use. It's so intuitive and easy to use in the consumer products that we use today, and that's sort of what people expect when they come into the workplace and try and manage their workflow or whatever it might be. So if we're trying to trying to keep pace with that without having the resources that some of the tech giants have is the biggest challenge, I think.
Yeah, good. Excellent. Thank you, guys. We're going to talk next about the future and what we're all excited about. What steps are coming, what new developments, what new standards, how do we wrap our heads around where we're going next? We've talked about 25,000 parts within 5 years, all of those targets and goals. Jennifer, let's start with you. You're recently involved in a new opportunity. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, so we just announced last week that Wabtec will be the anchor tenant for parts production at a new location called Neighborhood 91. If you're not familiar with it, it's an additive manufacturing ecosystem at the Pittsburgh airport that will combine parts production, powder production, heat treat, machining, the whole package, the whole ecosystem in one location. So if you guys have made parts now and you don't have everything in-house, you know that a part can travel thousands of miles before it reaches its final destination. And yet we preach about, localization of additive and localization of additive manufacturing, how it enables that for everyone. So it's time to, practice what we preach and put it all in one location that it can happen in one spot. So we're really excited. If you can't tell, I'm very excited about this. Been working on it for a long time, and we finally announced that we'll be there. So in the spring, around the March timeframe, is where we'll be moving in, and then there's still some tenant attraction going on, and others that we'll soon be announcing as well. But that's our growth platform for AM, and we are excited to see who else joins us at that neighborhood.
Congratulations, Jennifer. That's very exciting. Anyone else on the panel internationally want to move to Pittsburgh and join Neighborhood? There you go. All right, you got one volunteer. Let's talk a little bit about the rest of you. What's exciting? What's in front of you? Tarun, we'll start with you.
I think for us, we're really excited about standards coming in. So standards related to how parts are made for the particular industries which we are focusing on, the oil, gas, and marine sector. In terms of how parts can be qualified, as well as the sort of data packages that you deliver to the customer. So right now, everybody's given different sorts of data packages to the customer when they deliver the part. No one's really figured this out yet. There's no right, there's no wrong. But having a common understanding as to, hey, as long as my data package has this in A, B, and C, I'm pretty okay. If you want to add D, E, and F, then sure, why not? In terms of the certification, we're looking at a common understanding between the classification bodies, people like the DNVGLs, the BVs, and the American Bureau of Shipping. Those sort of people as to, hey, look, we're not going to go through 10,000 lines of print logs and G codes, if you will. We want to see sort of like a graph, and if everything is within the specification or the power consumption, we're pretty cool with that. Your part can be certified. Yeah, and then I think more so we're also really excited about getting parts closer to consumption, so printers closer to consumption. So having sort of like a Pier 91 at the at different ports. So we've partnered with the Port of Singapore Authority to have one of our facilities inside over there. So we print out parts directly where it's consumed. Obviously, getting the printers in was a challenge, but now we're looking at, oh, we need to have these post-processing equipments over there, and so on and so forth. So I think that's what's driving us, and I think the future looks bright, getting printers right next to where the part's going to be consumed.
Great. Thank you, Tarun. Thomas, what's ahead for you?
Yeah. Well, a few things are ahead of us. So most closely is at the end of October. I'm hoping to announce really big collaboration between a few companies in the medical sector, where we integrate our software into X-ray systems to be able to print preoperative planning tools like X-ray, like the anatomy of the patient actually for preoperative planning. but also like working a lot with this digital warehousing and distributed manufacturing. And Tarun, I think you were in that scope where you put printers at a facility. We as a logistics company, like I said, we have a lot of facilities all around, and creating this printing network to host the availability of local presence is something that I look forward to in the few coming years to be a part of that, because I think it would be very, very important that we as a big logistics company doesn't say that we are the actual manufacturers of your parts. We are just hosting the capability of a joint distributed manufacturing network located within the reach of your end customer. And this is very important from our point of view. And I think this will be in the 5 years to come, we will see a lot of that popping up, more of those collaborations between companies that have facilities located prepared for manufacturing. Our facilities are all basically industrial facilities with mostly the demands needed for AM or different manufacturing. So those are like the two things that I look forward to. The medical sector being one of those, being more digitalized and future-proofed in medical sector, and yeah, the distributed manufacturing society growing.
Great, thank you, Thomas. And finally, Nick.
Yeah, I think I've already mentioned the e-commerce platform that we've developed that's going to be going live in this quarter. So that's something that I'm personally really excited about, that helps us interact more with the more transactional customers that we have. But on the other side, we've got I guess we're doing one of the same things that everyone else has already mentioned, in that our Alabama facility was launched at the beginning of this year, and we have powder production all the way through to post-processing on site. And I think Jennifer mentioned how many thousands of miles parts can travel to get everything done. I think we felt some of the similar challenges. So getting all that under one roof and utilizing our powder life system to facilitate the movement of powder around that is something that we're really excited about. So they're kind of the two main things for me that are moving ahead, that we're really looking forward to sharing with everyone.
Great, thank you. I heard two main themes among many, but those two themes are somewhat in conflict in my own head. So I wanted to throw this out again and get your help. So one is, let's get everything under one roof. Let's have the full end-to-end process in one location, physical location, and make sure that we don't have to travel that part around the world to get it from A to Z. The other theme I heard is localization. Put the parts, put the printers where you need them, put the other pieces there. How do those conflict, or are we saying put the end-to-end in very localized places? Jennifer. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Jennifer.
Yeah, I guess for me, it depends on the investment. It's economically driven. So for example, if we're talking about plastics or maybe some lower end machines, yeah, put them everywhere, do it, put them where they need to go. But if we're talking about big metal AM systems, I don't see that as economically feasible yet to localize them everywhere. You have to be strategic about where you put what machines. And for us, it doesn't even make sense for us to all have it within the Wabtec roof, which is why we're excited about the neighborhood concept, where I don't hold the capital expense for every part of the AM process, but I rely on others who do those expertly, and I do what I do well. So that's, I think it depends on the economics of the investment is where I see it right now.
Nice, perfect, thank you. Thomas.
Yeah, I was just about to say that it depends really on what the investment is, and like we as a logistics company, we move stuff from one point to another point, and therefore we have a lot of data on different products, etc., or what the customers send everywhere. So from our perspective would be that, analyzing all the data with AM, of course, to find out where products are actually traveling the most. So let's say that we have a lot of our customers are sending stuff to a location near Oslo in Norway, which is the capital. Then we can actually put a printing facility with the required printers in Oslo. but we wouldn't put them there if there weren't a requirement, like there wasn't a need for it. But all the small printers, for sure, we could place a lot of them in. We have about 6,000 facilities in the Nordic region, so we could put 6,000 printers in all of them. But it wouldn't make sense in that perspective, because if you want to have a quality production, then it costs a lot of money today, and the technology is not there yet to actually do that. But I mean, in the future, we don't really know about how the printers will be or how the quality management systems will be remotely to the printers. It could be a utopia that we could put printers everywhere, but I'm more of finding the key spots around the world to put printers in, to make it as local as possible, but also finding and like the neighborhood initiative that you're doing is really, really incentive in the way that it invites communities to actually come together and make a community-based economy and community-based production management. So I think it's a really good idea.
Awesome. So again, recurring theme of investment and decision-making based on data. That makes a lot of sense. Tarun, any addition there?
Yeah, so totally agree with the full regionalization concept. You don't want to have a printer everywhere. You want to sort of analyze and understand what parts you're producing, what your customers are using. So we like to do an analysis, a sort of a diagnostic, as to understand, okay, fine, what are the parts being consumed, what are they buying off the shelf, so on and so forth, and then work with our customers as to, okay, hey, do you need a specialized heat treatment machine for this one part which you consume maybe once every 10 years? Then you might as well just manufacture it at a 91 location where Jennifer is, and then ship it. Or if you're manufacturing an as printed part and consuming that very regularly, then yeah, that may make sense to put a printer over there. So again, analyzing the data and then strategically making a decision as to which printer, what materials make sense in what location.
Yeah, thank you. Nick, any thoughts?
Yeah, I think that sort of the distributed manufacturing dream is still, I think AM is starting to enable that reality, but we have to remember there's the digital side of it, but there's also the actual AM technology side of it. Well, machines are as expensive as they are, and the results that we get to hit the levels of cost non-quality that we should be aiming for, we're not there yet. So we're not at a stage where you can just plonk a machine and the associated products where you want it. And I think we've got to enhance and move forward the digital side of it, while the AM machine tool manufacturers of the world enhance and improve the technologies coming down that route, and that distributed manufacturing sort of dream that I think we have in mind will come closer to reality. But until then, having these clusters, I think, is a great way forward, and trying to digitally connect those clusters is another big step and start as well. If we can exchange that information in a sensible way instead of sending PDF files to each other, that'd be a really big start.
Good, thank you. So we've talked about dreams, we've talked about challenges. Let's talk about how we action on this. How do we get the decision made? How do you go to an investment committee to get the right to make these expansions? Let's go in reverse order. We'll start with you, Nick. Any tips and tricks on how to push these initiatives forward?
So I think Carpenter Additive has spent about $200 million over the last 3 years on in improving and acquiring AM capability. I've only been involved in requesting a small amount of that, as I was part of one of the companies that they acquired. So I don't know quite what my colleague said to achieve that, but I think being able to sell that vision and set ourselves as a business that is got deep foundations in material development over 120 years, but is pivoting and making sure we're still focused on the future and setting the direction of the future is a real key part of creating that business case at the C-suite level, and making sure they understand we're doing something that's going to be valuable in years to come. I think that's really been the focus of the way that we're talking about investments. And if you get stuck talking about a 1-year payback or something like that, you're going to get into quite a challenging place where we're really planning for the future and for longevity.
Excellent, thank you, Nick. Tomas, your thoughts?
Yeah, there are two ways to look at it from our point of view, and like one side is the machine side, one is the business side of things, and we kind of early on decided not to heavily invest in machine property because we didn't see that the technology was ready for a high scalable distributed manufacturing. So from our side, it was more to find the investments of time and the digitalization tools, for example. But driving that type of thoughts, you need to make sure that the C-levels understand what journey you're on, what you want to produce with the investment, and not talk about short-term returns, like you said, Nick. So more of the bigger perspective of the journey within the company. How does this fit into our company, and what are the potential benefits of our company? With a certain technology like AM, it's kind of hard to predict all these things. So bringing in a big investment requirement to the CFO, which is my manager, wouldn't work. He would just say no. The future is we cannot predict the future that much. So it depends on what company you are, really. Like, we don't have the urge to invest a lot in machines. Like, we have a lot of machines in our traditional business, but that comes from the organic growth that we do normally. But looking into this perspective, we need to make sure that we are ready for a scalable distributed manufacturing. So bringing the right type of information to our investors internally it's crucial at this very stage, because if I would come to bring machine investments, it would fail in less than 2 years because we wouldn't be able to have that return, basically.
Okay, great, thank you. And Tarun?
I think for us, the pitch that we give is that AM has been growing steadily. It's every day the new advancements help it make it better, faster, more cost efficient. Quality standards are coming out. Certification is getting a lot more easier. So the future is bright. That's one thing that we tell our potential investors. And then another thing is also that AM is part of your whole Industry 4.0 or digitalization initiative. It's a small part, but a very important part in enabling leaner manufacturing, and especially for countries, I can speak for Singapore, that may not have a sort of like a large industrial space. So you want to have a technology or a manufacturing system that's really efficient, and you're able to pack it in a small office building, for example. So getting good government support and showcasing what the technology is capable of and the value that it brings to an industry that consumes really old, outdated parts. I think that's what really makes AM quite unique.
Wonderful, thank you. And to wrap us up, Jennifer, your final thoughts.
Yeah, on investments. So when we first started this, I think you guys kind of mentioned it already, but it was about understanding where we were in the technology growth curve, and just seeing, are we too early to invest, or are we too late, or are we right where we're supposed to be, and then pacing the investment according to that technology growth curve. So we looked at, the different indicators, patents, and growth in sales of machines, etc., to understand when the right time was to invest and at the right level. And then from there, it's about securing those key applications that make the business case sing. And there aren't. It's not to say that everything that we make will be AM. It certainly will not. I will be the first to say that in our company and tell everyone that. But when you do find that thing that makes the most sense to make with AM, and you get additional value from either first pass yield or quality or design freedom and flexibility that gives you performance, that's when you take that and you tell everyone, because that is what gets you investment. So we have those few things identified, and that is what we talk about when we talk about investment over the years.
Excellent, thank you. Okay, everybody, I think we did it. Are there any questions that anyone would like to be asked and addressed? Is there anything that we missed? Jennifer, I'll start with you. Is there anything you wanted to highlight that you didn't get a chance to?
I don't think so. I think I'm okay.
Tarun?
Let me come back. Just give me a minute. I'm still thinking about it.
No, you're good. Nick?
Yeah, no, I think we covered everything, which is really good.
All right. Thomas?
No, not really. One thing that I would like to add, though, is on the fact of investments here that we talked about, if that's okay.
Yeah.
And it was when Jennifer started talking, I realized that, you know, today's salespersons from machine manufacturers are already selling the dream of, you know, distributed manufacturing, like office printing with 3D printers. And like when you look at data, you can be very fooled on the increased amount of printers sold, because like they include a lot of different printers, and the way that salespeople on these companies work is kind of frightening. If you look at like traditional manufacturing or other printing industries, etc., is that, you know, when you buy the printer, you will be shocked of how much you need to do to make your facility ready for an actual healthy environment for your employees to print in. So I think it's right now really hard to make investment based on that kind of data. And I mean, that's why we're really staying away from it. We're more evaluating how the market is developing, looking at companies that actually do a lot of parts with AM. So yeah, that's my take on it.
Great, thank you. All right, Tarun, any last softball you'd like?
Yeah, I think coming back to the investment side, it would be really cool to like mention how investment strategies are changing because of COVID. So like we've seen that the kind of investment discussions that we were having at the start of the year and the investment discussions that we're having right now are totally different. So customers are a lot more like, okay, hey, this seems a little bit too dreamy. Show me the hard data, show me the numbers, and then, you know, really dive into. Whereas earlier they might have been, oh, okay, this seems cool. Here's $1 billion or $1 trillion.
Yeah.
Zimbabwe dollars, but
yeah,
okay.
Exactly. Great point. Thank you.
Good point about the COVID. I could just put in there that, you know, the business side of things have changed a lot. You know, the driving of local manufacturing has already increased due to the fact of COVID. We have seen a lot of our companies here in Sweden turn to a more additive manufacturing style, because they could not get the parts done from Asia when there was the big lockdown in China, etc. So already people are realizing the fact that from the business side, maybe we should look at our local like production strategies and invest more into a more sustainable product development, or like a product sales even, because, you know, with COVID and with the world's sustainability questions and discussions, these two are kind of driving local manufacturing really hard, I would say, or at least the idea of it becomes more relevant than ever.
Yeah. Thank you, guys.
All right. Thank you all. See you.
Thank
you all so much.
Have a nice day.